Hello, welcome back to another 5 intro. I'm Jacob Joe and say it's kind of bittersweet. Oh my god. We're talking about the end of an era, which is both exciting but sad. Percy Jackson popped up in my life randomly because of a television show, and then I declared that I was going to read all 17 books before the beginning of the television show, and then it didn't happen, as we all know. And then I ended up watching the TV show while I was reading the books, and then Percy Jackson sent me into a reading slump, and then I kind of just cut off Percy Jackson entirely, and now we're here with the end of Percy Jackson in this universe so far. I will continue to read and review the books going forward. The second book in the new series, The Chalice of the Gods, comes out in September. I will read it for a reading vlog, probably vlog my experience, talk about it, or do a sit down review like I'm doing for The Sun and the Star, which is a Nico D'Angelo story, which we'll talk about here in a second. There are some beautiful things to talk about for this book, and there's also some other things I want to mention. This book is a true sequel. You do need to know all characters to get the real reaction. You can obviously just read it on its own and just seem like, who are these people? Why is this story important? But to be fair, Nico D'Angelo and his boyfriend, gosh, I can't remember his name, Will, Nico and Will, their relationship is so tender and sweet here. It's one of my favorite parts. If you really enjoyed House of Hades, or the parts that focus on Annabeth and Percy in that book, oh my god, do I have a book for you. Pick it up immediately. It also does feel like a true conclusion to the Percy Jackson genre as a whole. So I can understand why, if Rick Gordon wanted to go back into this world, he would go back into a time that's already spoiled for us. That's also another thing. Like, I do recommend reading this last, but purely after the new trilogy is done. Because here's the thing with Percy Jackson and these books and these novels, they do get spoiled for you. You do know the end results because Trials of Apollo takes place 6 months after the event of the first Chalice of the Gods, which means we are aware of all the big surprises there. And for a lot of people, those are not surprises, and you don't care because you've already read them because these came out beforehand. But if you're a new Percy Jackson fan, I don't know why you clicked on the spoilery vlog, but maybe you did. If you're a new Percy Jackson fan, I do not recommend starting there. I recommend reading all the way up until Chalice of the Gods, and then skipping Trials of Apollo and skipping this. You have 6 books to read after you get done with that series, because they follow different characters, and you do get little tidbits updates with Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. Mostly Grover with Trials of Apollo, but there's a little bit to do with everybody else. This book is another one that does have to deal with his mom and things happening there and taken care of, which is so cute. Percy's also a part of it. So essentially, with this book, Nico has a dream that he needs to go save a centaur? That's who it is. It is a centaur, right? I want to say it's a centaur. No, it's not a centaur. A titan. That's what it is. Save a titan from the underworld. And so, but everybody knows if you go to the underworld, it's horrible. Your brain basically melts. It's like a whole thing. You basically are dying. You're basically killing yourself when you go to the underworld. Basically your spirit, I guess, is what you're killing. Because it turns you inside out. It makes you depressed. It makes you sad. It makes you want to jump into the river. It makes you purposely not want to continue your quest. Also, they do it kind of illegally here in Percy Jackson laws. Percy Jackson laws are very simple. When you go on a quest, you have 3 people. If you don't have 3 people, ultimately this quest is going to fail and die. Well, they don't have 3 people. They have 2 people. There's also some other parts that are talked a little bit in Trials of Apollo, I would say towards the end of that series, that do get brought up back here because there's Will. They are older. They have very tender and sweet romance. Oh my gosh. And I do have to say it feels a very different novel, and I want to say it's Mark O'Shear. I've never read I've never read their books. I think their pronouns are they, them. Let's see. Yes, they are non-binary. Never read their books before, but they do have quite a bit, and I am super curious to read some of them because, oh my gosh, I think they would be really good. Because, like, there's Rick Gordon here for sure. I'm not saying that, but you can tell that, like, he almost like dabbles it. He like waters down the Rick Gordon into like a perfect amount of Rick Gordon. So let's jump into some spoilers. That's essentially the plot. They have to go to the underworld, and then the plot takes place there. So there's 2 storylines going on here. There's a point in the book where you jump backwards. So essentially, the ones with the boat, okay, before you get like to chapter 1. So chapter 1 is they're telling this girl a story. We don't understand why they're telling a story, but we do know that Will is extremely injured, and that Nico is kind of injured as well, and they're gonna have to go on this quest, but they don't really know. We don't really know why. These are our present time stories. They are taking place later on in the book, and then chapters up until that time you're building up to these. These stories are their first time meeting, the first kiss that they share, the first I love yous, the first troubles, the heartbreaks, everything. They're having to tell this lady basically their entire life story because she's never seen love before. And it's super cute and it's super lovely, and it does have a dark and twistful ending to it where she wants to snatch those stories away. She ends up not. She ends up keeping them, but she ends up getting them safety because the stories don't really become apparent until the last third of the novel. And then you have the actual story. Will and, like I said, Will and Nico have this very sweet romance that even at times where it's challenged, you can still tell that they're never going to break up, and that's never a crutch here. They never do break up. Also, one of the best moments in the book is towards the first act, where Will looks at Nico, who is scared a part of the prophecy is someone's going to have to stay behind, which is something we've heard time and time again. One of the things that I love is that Will looks at Nico and says, I'm not going to make you choose. We are not staying behind. You do not have to choose between me and this person. I will go with you, or I will personally choose to save myself. This is not you. This is not on you. This is not a burden for you. And that is something that Nico truly needed to hear. And I just love that Will knew him well enough to tell him that information. Another thing that also is on here, once again, spoilers for the entire Percy Jackson series at this point. Jason's death is still very much apparent here. Nico has never really recovered from that death, and it's still plaguing him to this day. It's also interesting hearing Nico's POV about Percy and how much he has grown from his real like of Percy Jackson. Also, there are moments in here where it gets really dark and dealing with dramatic sequences. One of my favorite is talking about when Nico has this vision where he is back in this cage of where he is forced to come out. And I love what they do here to bring power back to that story, because I truly didn't. That's one of the parts I hate the most about House of Hades. Another thing about House of Hades, another character that's really important there is the Titan named Bob. That is the point here. They believe they're going to go save the Titan named Bob. They do eventually save the Titan named Bob and his cat, who ends up being that third person on this little trip with them. It's interesting because it's not like they don't actually technically, that's not the reason why he's going. There's a person here, there's a goddess, I can't remember her name, she ends up being the big bad in the entire book. There's a goddess here who ends up wanting Nico for herself. When Nico is down there the first time, which we didn't really get to hear about his events the first time he went to TARDIS, and that's a big part of this book as well, hearing about what they did, the torture that he went through, the pain and sorrow that he went through, even though he believes TARDIS is another home away from home. He still went through great torture before they put him into the jar to suck out his life before he was saved for House of Hades. He met someone there. It was a goddess, and she basically said, we can tear them all down. You just gotta be on my side. Next time you come back, I'm gonna get you to be on my side. I'm gonna show you that you have to be on my side. Essentially, that's what she did. That's the whole point of this novel, essentially, because he is being called. Rachel is also a part of this. Rachel is also being called. Rachel is getting these dreams that are so vivid that end up turning into nightmares that are about them going out to TARDIS. Obviously, they save Bob. They save Bob's cat. Everything works out in the end, and I think the closings are great. Percy and Annabeth are in college, which is amazing. Grover's living Grover's life. We have little short stories for everybody, little closing chapters for everybody. Apollo even shows up with Meg for a second, which I thought was kind of cool. It's not actually them, but it's nice to know that they're being thought of. Overall, like I said, I think I landed on a 4.5. Definitely a favorite in the Percy Jackson world. I would say it's super high up there. I would recommend highly. Obviously, I would say by this point, if you're reading this, it's because you already love Percy Jackson and you just want to read the next book in it. It's a good one. It's a great one. I found a new author that I'm really excited to read because, like I said, in my initial non-spoiler review, I talked about how Marco Shore, they diluted Rick Riordan's writing. I mean that in the way that Rick Riordan is very, at this point, I've read so many of these books, that he has a strict structure that he follows, and I can see that structure, and so there's moments in here where they are chasing down a god, or they are doing something with a god, where they have to go and appease a god, or whatever it might be, and you can see that, I want to say it's Mark, who comes in and makes it so it's more new and riveting, because I've read, newer books than this from Rick Riordan. Chalice the God is as new as they come, and that is the most simplest version I can tell you. If you read Chalice the God, that is Rick Riordan in a nutshell, right? Also, this is in third person, and oh my god, Rick Riordan in third person. He needs to write everything in third person. I'm really happy he brought in a queer author to come in to help write the story as well, because I do think it would come in off a little disingenuous. So he had the story he wanted to tell. I'm happy that he brought in all the voices he needed to tell the story organically, and it feels that way. It doesn't feel shoved. It doesn't feel anything that you would think it would feel. Huge fan. Sun Star. Great read. Would recommend. The end of Percy Jackson. I have one more video planned for Percy Jackson. Should be coming out relatively soon. And I'm going to tier list rank all of the Percy Jackson books, all 17 that I read, and tell you which ones are my favorite, which ones are my least favorite, to close out the saga of Percy Jackson off this channel. Once again, we will cover the new books that come out. Because I'm invested. I don't care if I know they go to college. I'm still invested. I'll still read them. I'm still curious. So I will read them, and I'll get back to you. Alright, thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.